Hello, everyone. I hope you have your coffee cup. I hope you're ready. Let's all take a sip of coffee together now. You're going to need this caffeine to match even 1 ounce of the energy, joy, and just general power of my next guest, which I can't wait to introduce. I am talking today with someone who is an influencer, an author, a very knowledgeable person in automotive, and her name is Chaya. So happy to welcome her. And so we can talk about all of the great things that she is currently doing in the automotive space, like namely going on book tour. Yes, and you can order your copy, mechanicshopfem.com/book. And I said copy, but what I really mean is copies. I personally ordered 10 of Chaya's books. Hi, Chaya.
Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me for coffee and chit chat this morning. I'm really excited about all of the stuff you're doing. Obviously, Repair Pal is a sponsor of this book tour that you're on currently. And so, you know, we're really proud of that. And we're proud of the work that you're doing. Why don't you just tell us a little bit more about it?
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Yes, I'm so proud to be sponsored by Repair Pal, to have this book tour sponsored by Repair Pal and a few other industry sponsors. It's really means a lot to me. It means a lot to my communities to see the automotive industry come out and rally around the work that I'm doing, which is really rallying around the communities that I'm serving. I wrote Mechanic Shop Fem's Guide to Car Ownership with a foreword by Repair Pal's former Vice President Jill Trotta. And when I finished it and I started thinking about how I'm going to bring this to people's homes and to people's communities and to people's lives, I said, I got to go on a book tour. And I didn't quite click what that book tour was going to look like until the publication was pushed from March of 2024 to April of 2024. And then it was like, it all clicked, that light bulb moment, because for the last 3 years, for National Car Care Month, which happens every year in April and October, I featured women and queer-owned mechanic shops from across the country. I produced a series. I reached out to them. They sent me their video, and I would write a script to tell their story and share it with my audience. And this series has gotten millions of views. So I was like, you know what? I got to take my book and take it on tour and go to these shops and bring my community to these shops and try to figure out a way to connect them with their local independent repair shops that are doing the work, that are going to treat them with honesty and respect and kindness. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have Repair Pal have my back in this space.
Yes, absolutely. We're delighted to. And I was so excited when I heard you were embarking on this journey because, of course, as you mentioned, you've been a successful influencer for quite some time now. Somebody that I really admire and whose content I consume voraciously. So that part has been awesome. And why don't you tell people a little bit about sort of, you know, how you got into all this in the first place and why it matters so much to you?
You know, a lot of people have different stories of how they got into the industry, especially women. But mine started when I was 18. I was 18 years old. I was aging out of the foster care system. I was desperate for a job, which I could not find, no matter how many applications I filled out, because our system is set up in a way that really prioritizes connections in the space. My foster parents were in their 70s. I didn't have anybody who knew anybody who could help me get a job. And eventually I started a GoFundMe and I was like, I need some help and I don't know what else to do. And that GoFundMe was like the catalyst to this automotive career because someone reached out to me. Her name was Faith. And she said, Chaya, I want to help you. I verified your story and I want to help you. And I was like, yes, that's awesome. She's like, but I know money only goes so far. So what do you really need? And I'm like, I need a job. And she knew exactly what to do. She had a friend who was the HR manager at the Sears department store. And she got me an interview. And I got into this interview and I said, did the pleasantries. And then I was asked, so what department do you want to work in? And I was like, oops. And then the first thing that came to my mind was whichever department makes the most money. I'm a Capricorn, if you can't tell that yet. Now you know. And luckily, I didn't get kicked out of the interview. She offered me appliances or automotive. And automotive was kind of that first thing that piqued my interest. She followed that up with, do you have a driver's license? And my answer was no, because what most people in the auto industry don't know is that foster kids cannot get their driver's license.
That's right.
Almost all cases until they're 18. So I had to go get my driver's license for that job. And, that led me to where I am today with this book.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad you didn't choose appliances. We might never be having this conversation if that was the case.
No, my friend Renee, the appliance repair tech on social media, she got appliances. Actually, I got to redo that. My friend Renee, they got appliances covered all on social media, and you can definitely check them out there.
Yeah, that's good. So of course, the appliance people too. That doesn't surprise me at all. But yeah, I'm happy you got that start. I think I might have mentioned to you once before, I had a brief stint of working at Sears as well, but I worked in women's clothing. I did not get asked what department do you want to be in. And so they put me in women's clothing, but I didn't, sorry, Sears, but I didn't love it so much.
Listen, I had my own struggles. I mean, they're not around anymore. So there's.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm happy for those places that employed us when we were young and, brash in the wrong ways. Now, of course, we're brash still, but in the right ways, which I'm excited about. But, you've always been a person that just sort of pulls yourself up and kind of decides what you're going to do next, no matter how, sort of big or hairy it might seem like it's going to be up front. And then you make something happen, which is one of the things I admire so much about you. There are a lot of things I admire about you, but that's one. So where do you think that comes from?
There's nothing quite like trauma and struggle to make you tenacious and to make you, in some cases, feel invincible. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I feel like the worst has already happened. So my fear is less. Now, of course, trauma and, life could also go the other direction. But I'm lucky that for me, it's made me feel like I don't have much to lose. And most importantly, that I have to fight for my communities. Like, I've had people fight for me. I've had people support me, even just that one person that helped me get the job, or Jill, who helped me get a job later in my career, that led to the friendship and mentorship that we have today, dancing with you, Kathleen, at Women in Auto Care, and, connecting over the pandemic. It's been incredible to have all these badass people have my back. And I feel like it's my duty to have my people's back. And that's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a responsibility to each other. And you might know, I recently traveled to Kenya. And when I was looking at, just really absorbing how much of a difference it makes, what different circumstances people are literally born into, like the thing that you don't really have the choice around. And how that might change your future. And at first I was asking myself, why, was I born where I was born? Why, do I have the inherent talents that I, what was the reason? Then I decided, I'm not going to figure out the why, and I'm asking the wrong question. The right question, I think, is the what. Like, okay, so, I have certain privileges, and I have certain space that I now occupy after years of hard work. Because I didn't start from very much either. But, the question is, now that I'm here, which is a very privileged place, what am I going to do with it? And, how am I going to serve others? And there's a lot of opportunities to do that across pretty much any dimension you can imagine, because our world has many joys in it, but also many sorrows and many things that are screwed up.
Yeah.
So we have so many opportunities to make an impact. And obviously, one of those places that isn't as forward thinking as it should be, quite frankly, is the world of automotive and, automotive care and repair, of course. And so I think that's part of what your book so eloquently addresses.
Thank you. I agree. I didn't land in like the optimal industry for, my passion and my skill set, and especially not as like a very assertive, openly queer, openly fat, confident woman. I didn't land in a space that necessarily appreciated those talents. And I still have to fight hard for that appreciation. But I feel like now that I'm here and now that I've chosen this as my path, I need to figure out how to support. And one of the things that I'm really grateful that I'm going to be able to do with this book tour is the ticket sales, $5 per ticket. I'm going to 16 different cities. At the end of, we're sort of at the tail end here, but I'm going to 16 different mechanic shops across the United States, and the tickets are all $5. And those ticket sales will go to fund the Jill Trotta Scholarship. And that scholarship will help the next generation of women and queer folks that are looking to enter the industry in more untraditional ways. You can use it to apply it towards tuition, but you can also use it to buy a toolbox or to get the correct clothing or to do the interview prep or whatever is necessary for you to get into the automotive industry. And I'm proud to, even as I celebrate my big moment and my big accomplishment in this field, to be able to try to give back in whatever way I could.
That's really awesome of you. And I think those scholarships are so important. So one of the volunteer things I did, last few years was I helped to kind of score. I don't know that that's the right word, but to assign a ranking, I guess, to scholarship applications that were coming into the ASCCA, which is one of the organizations that Repair Pal participates in. We're in a lot of them, by the way. But, there was an opportunity to do that. And I really thought that it was going to be easy looking through these applications to do that. There's some binary things like, are they talking about staying in automotive, or, do they want to go into jet plane repair? That's not a bad career, but that's not what the scholarship is designed for. So you're just looking for some basic things, but then also you're scoring on, some things that are a little bit more subjective, like, what does it seem like the need is, or what does it seem like, they're going to do with this? And of course, that scholarship is not focused on women in specific or queer people in specific, but just mostly students that, across a number of different dimensions that have financial need. And what really struck me about so many of these people is that the financial insecurity is so precarious, right? It's like, hey, I was going to school, I was affording my life, I had a job, I was supporting my family, but then I got a flat tire.
Yeah.
Right. And then that flat tire mushroomed into a thing where now I can't afford my school, I lost my job, right? Just these very simple things that we think about. And look, this is true. I'm sure people are going to be watching this. Some of my supporters from previous jobs, other things that I've had tend to consume my content. I'm very grateful about that. This is true across industries. So when we think about how we want to help people, just suffice to say that if you haven't experienced it or you're not currently experiencing it, you do not understand how precarious the financial insecurity is for people that are really in that transition moment, and they're living, meal to meal, hour to hour, day to day, maybe even being paid by the day. And so, these scholarships, when they're helping needy, we think about, oh yeah, maybe someone needs a little extra money to go to school or whatever. It is not like, in many cases, the traditional scholarships that kids get to supplement their ability to go to college.
Right.
This is really something where without this scholarship, they're going to be absolutely stuck, in the current life that they have and in that financial insecurity. And this gives them a bridge to potentially, master technicians make pretty good money these days, right? So to being able to do something that you love or have a talent for, and the only way to be able to do that is to get this kind of financial support. So I'm a big believer of scholarship for the trades, and I like the particular focus that you've taken in doing that as well. It's going to make a big difference for some people, and I'm excited about that.
Thank you. And people don't realize how much tools cost. Like once you get beyond a lube tech, you need to provide your own tools in order to succeed at your job. And you cannot continue borrowing them, especially when you're a woman or a queer person and you're likely working in a shop where many of your male coworkers don't support your being there. Many of their wives don't support your being there loudly. Having access to money to get that toolbox together so that you're in a good position to, get the job done and push forward. It's so important. I've never hid my background or my past. I grew up in a very impoverished home. I'm the oldest of 15 children. I was raised by Hasidic Jewish parents, and I deeply understand poverty. And my wife always says that the first time she walked into my parents' house, which was many years after we met, we don't have the greatest relationship. She realized how she didn't get how I had grown up until that moment, because she couldn't believe that it could have been in the level of poverty in which it was, until she walked up the stairs to the house and the stairs were falling apart, and and things like that. And when I bought my first car when I was 18, I got lucky. I got so lucky. I got a loan from a credit union based on 2 offer letters. Like I didn't even have a job, based on 2 offer letters. And that turned into a disaster, which luckily resolved itself well at the end of the day. But buying the right car and spending the right money on it with, and pre-planning and doing the research, like those are all skills, and those are all knowledge that has traditionally been gate kept for women and from queer folks. Ironically, because women make 85% of the car buying decisions and hold 1.5 million more driver's license than men in the United States. And when I set out to write this book, I really wanted to make sure to include get as granular and as fundamental as I could so that it would make a difference. And then once it was out, and once it is out, it's $20, but not everybody has $20. So I started a pay it forward initiative where you can buy a book or 3 or 10, Kathleen.
Yeah.
And we will send that book out to somebody who needs it, because we have a form where folks can fill out. And a lot of times when you are somebody who is poor and you are trying to access of certain services or certain things that are available to you, it's done in a very disrespectful, dehumanizing way that doesn't acknowledge you and your experiences in your life, and requires you to jump through so many hoops in order to get just the basic services and knowledge that are needed. So here you just fill out a form. You can request a copy. You just fill out a quick form. You don't have to provide your pay stubs. You don't have to provide anything. And you can request a copy of the book to get sent to you, because people who live in poverty or who live paycheck to paycheck and are very close to poverty at any moment, like you said, the flat tire, they can't afford to buy the wrong car, where they're going to go and buy the car and then the car is going to break down on them in a very short period of time. They cannot afford to not maintain their car and prevent an entirely preventable repair, but they need the knowledge in order to do that. And, that's why I tried to lay out the book starts with how to buy a car, then goes into car insurance and how to find a good mechanic. And for my industry folks, you'll be very happy. I have a whole section on mechanic shop etiquette, how you behave as a customer in a repair shop, how you explain your problems with your car to the mechanic. And, trying to offer both sides of that perspective of somebody who spent 7.5-ish years in repair and collision shops, as a service advisor, as a service manager, as a collision estimator, in all these different roles in 3 states. Like, I've seen it from both sides. And I wanted to provide a way for folks to be able to share their wealth, share their money, and pay it forward and help somebody else with something that is just a fundamental need in most of the US. And if you're somebody who says, cars are a privilege, cars aren't necessary, they're just an extra thing, you've probably never been poor. Or you haven't lived in an area that doesn't have proper public transportation access, where you can't just go and take the train to wherever you're going at whatever time of day. And you haven't been limited by public transit in what jobs you're able to take and how much time you have to rest between those jobs. So yeah, cars aren't a privilege. They're not an extra. They're a fundamental necessity to most Americans. And if I can do something small, very, very small on my end to try to help folks, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't understand too, that they think of, a big city, and then there's some people that are the haves and some people that are the have-nots. There are whole communities where everybody in the community is experiencing some form of economic instability, right? Where, there isn't the sort of divide and all of that. And those communities do not have any form of public transportation. Life takes so much longer. So everything you do as an economically disadvantaged person takes longer, between getting to places, all the things that you mentioned that you have to fill out in order to receive public assistance. If you've never received public assistance, let me just tell you, it's not as easy as you think it is. And the instances of fraud are really overshadowed by so many instances of people that need access to resources, whether it's, mental health resources or job resources or other things that either are not available or that they have trouble getting access to because the barriers that they have to having, super successful, productive lives are the same ones that keep them from jumping through the millions of hoops and loops that they've set up, that sort of gatekeep these resources. It makes it really, really difficult. And people don't understand or realize that the bureaucracy is real in these experiences. And even the private money, so to speak, usually comes with some kind of strings, religious or otherwise, that you kind of have to go through in order to get access to those resources. So I am familiar. I have myself been in a position to consume some of those resources. And I understand that poverty in the US looks different than poverty in other countries. And so we still have access to certain things here, books being one of those beautiful things, for example. And so I think it's lovely that you've, made it available so people can go do that. In fact, I'm hearing you talk about it, and I ordered 10 books, 1 for me and 9 for friends and other things. So I think after this, I'm going to go and order 10 for other people that I don't know. Yes. And I encourage everybody who's listening to this to do that. Yes. mechanicshopfem.com/book. You can order your copy. And
you can order your copy there, and you can also pay it forward. Like, it's one of the options in the selections. You don't have to.
Yes, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, an act of kindness that you can do for someone else, which I think is gorgeous. And I'm so glad that everything that you've done very intentionally with the idea around connection, even including the way that you've constructed this tour. And so, how have you thought about, just as a professional woman who is so proud of who you are, how have you thought about building your connections, and where do they come from?
I ask a lot of people to connect me, including you, Kathleen. You've gotten my emails where I'm, when I'm in my hardest times, when I'm like, hey, please introduce me to your people, because I know you have a lot of power and a lot of sway. Here we go. I told you I wasn't going to cry. Introduce me.
We like emotions here. We like emotions. Emotions are so productive.
Thank you. Yeah, like introduce me to your connections. Mention me in rooms full of opportunities, because most people won't be doing that. And I know that even bringing up my name in certain spaces is almost like taking a stand for a specific opinion or specific thing. But you know what? If you've gotten to the place in your career where you can afford to do that, then doing that means a lot to me and to other folks in the industry. Like there's a lot of us, that are either servicing the consumers directly or, that are on the bottom level, people that are actually fixing the cars, that are helping the customers, that are working in the parts stores, that are working on the bottom rungs that don't have access to opportunities like women in auto care and other places, because continuing education budgets don't prioritize our continuing education. They prioritize the continuing education of C-suite and, the senior level. And so yeah, connecting, asking people for connections and being sure, I live by closed mouths don't get fed. I spend a lot of time actively doing outreach, whether it is to brands or it is to people. I'm not the best at LinkedIn, but I'm trying. Every time I go to Women in Auto Care for the next couple of months, I'm like, LinkedIn, I'm all gung-ho. And then some other social media platforms usually end up taking priority. But yeah.
It's hard to be queen of every platform, Chaya.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, because you've got the work, and then you've got the promoting of the work, and then you've got the, responding to what happened when you promoted the work and all of that kind of stuff. I deal with that struggle. I've limited my platforms too, just because I just can't really keep up with it all. And I feel like if I'm gonna, puke out content, I also need to ingest content as part of the give receive of everything that I try to do. I try to make sure that there's a balance in the exchange. And it's just impossible to do that across, so many different platforms. So it's all right. We can see you in lots of places. So we won't be upset about the lack of, LinkedIn.
But definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, because when I have something big, it's going on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right. And then it's going to be reshared by, your friends like me and others when we see it. And so yes, definitely connect. Is there other places that you'd like people to go to find you?
Sure. So for professional opportunities, Twitter, X, or LinkedIn is probably the best. And, send me an email. I have 790,000 followers across platforms. The messages get lost, especially when I'm in the middle of traveling for a tour. So if you can send me an email, it's just Chaya@mechanicshopfem.com, or you can send me a message on Twitter or LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect about professional opportunities. And then, of course, if you want to learn about cars, because I know that many people that work in the automotive industry do not know as much about cars as it appears they do. Like if you sell brakes, you know everything about brakes. And if you like you, Kathleen, you spend a lot of time dealing with mechanic shops and work and that network of independent repair shops. I have information about car insurance, and I have information about buying a car and selling a car and electric cars that might even help change your perspective a little bit on certain things. You're going to be able to learn across the other platforms. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all at Mechanic Shop Fem.
Nice. Well, that's beautiful. So I guess I wouldn't want to leave here without you being able to drop like one more like really juicy nugget for people. And so I think, as I've mentioned, one of the things I admire most about you is your authenticity. So, a lot of people, when they think about their career, they wind themselves up, or they, kind of put up a certain amount of facade or veneer or whatever you want to call it. The mask that we wear, so to speak, over the top. And so what's your advice to people about living and operating, particularly in the context of career, just more authentically?
I know I look like I live my life with full authenticity, but there's a level of a veneer there too. I'm open about a lot of things other people aren't open with, but it's not everything. I think as, quote unquote a public figure, which doesn't exactly describe me. It's important to keep some things to yourself, to keep some moments to yourself. To, I give a lot, and I try to give in private when I can. Sometimes I need my community to rally behind me to do whatever project I'm doing, but when I can, I try to give in private. But when it comes to like being your full authentic self, if you will, it's harder when you're small potatoes, like I like to say. When you're the little guy in the room, it's a lot harder. And if you're not in that place yet to be able to feel comfortable, then don't let that experience of where you are at right now color what you're going to do 5 years down the line. Because when you're at a place, when you have a better job and a bigger job and have more power, remember where you came from, and remember what you've been through, and remember what people around you have been through. Because even if it's not your direct experience, you have witnessed, hopefully, if your community is diverse enough and your friend group is diverse enough and you work in places that encourage that kind of diversity, you've seen other people struggle, and you are able to learn from their experiences. And when you get into a position of power, you're able to stand up for them. You're able to live your life as your full self. But remember that being yourself is just one part of it. Then taking that power to be who you are and using it to uplift your community, to uplift the people behind you, to make other people's lives easier is just as important as wearing sequin when you want to wear sequin. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you feel like you cannot get to that place where that will be the thing, make it yourself. If you're in a place where like, listen, I worked many, many jobs in the industry. I spent almost 7.5 years in 3 different states. And what I took power in is that I took as much as I could from every opportunity, and then I would move on to the next one so that I can get more money and more access and more knowledge and grow my way up the food chain, even if it wasn't the way that it was done traditionally, especially back then. I know recently those things have changed. But when you decide it's enough and you are tired and you're starting to feel like maybe this isn't worth it, remember that you can take your dreams and your passions and your goals and what you would like to see the automotive industry or any other industry look like, and you can build it, you can create it, and you can be the change that you want to see in the world. You don't need to wait until somebody else builds that network for you. And that's hard. I ran Mechanic Shop Femme for years while I still had an industry job, and I got lucky enough, and this is kind of a backwards way of saying it, but I got lucky enough to be laid off in April of 2020. And there were nobody driving. So looking for another job in the repair space, which was already so hard to find to begin with, was not really possible. So I decided that instead of, waiting for unemployment to come, which, by the way, if you're self-employed, unemployment took months and months to come. If I would have waited, I would have been out. I asked my community for support. I told them, listen, I got laid off. My wife got furloughed, and I asked my community for support. I shared my work, and I told them, listen, take my classes. Let's get this going. And by June, I got laid off in April. By June of 2020, I was on the cover of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel in an article that profiled me. And one thing I said to that journalist that I think made it into the story was, I don't think I'm ever going to work for anybody else. And I didn't know where I was going to end up. And I didn't know how I was going to be able to pay all the bills or how I was going to be able to get through. But I knew that between me and the people and the relationships that I built and the people who surrounded me, strangers from many countries all around the world, from people who had just seen the work I did and seen how I showed up authentically as myself in all these different spaces, that I'd be able to make it out. And luckily I didn't fail, because that was totally possible. Like, you have to acknowledge that screwing the pooch and losing everything and everything falling apart was a possibility. And it still is a possibility today. Like, I fight every day every week, every month for every brand partnership that I get in the automotive industry space. Like, I have to explain my value to brands that have worked with men in this space for years and years and years. And I have to prove that I deserve to be paid what I deserve to be paid, despite the fact that I have 790,000 followers, 87% of which are women. That is unheard of in the automotive space. I mean, even your favorite women automotive influencers have significant male followings. And maybe it's the fact that I'm not traditionally beautiful like many of the incredible women in the space, but I've been able to curate through my education and through my sharing my story an audience of women and queer folks that they're regular people. They're not car enthusiasts. All they want is to be acknowledged. All they want is to learn from somebody who's willing to do it on their terms, that's willing to see their humanity. And I know I keep saying like seeing your humanity, but it's such a real thing. At the end of the book, I write there that, listen, when I go into the mechanic shop or to buy a car, my experience is basically like everybody else's. I don't have car educator stamped on my forehead. People don't know who I am, and I get treated the same way that you do, Kathleen, and the same way that everybody else in the industry gets treated. So the change that I'm creating for the world is change that I hope I will also create for myself. My wife and I at least, my wife did. I helped. My wife leased a Nissan Leaf from the local Nissan dealership a few weeks ago. And the salesperson was a queer Latina woman, and she was a badass. And she did so good. She answered all the questions. When she didn't know, she went to ask. She treated us with respect and kindness and care and thoughtfulness. And when she made mistakes, she acknowledged them. And you know what? She's one of the best salespeople in that dealership. She's been there for 10 years. Most people wouldn't even hire her if they walked through the door. She walked through the door looking for a job.
Yep. And by the way, when these people walk through the door looking for jobs and you don't hire them, you are directly impacting your bottom line. I mean, there's so many other reasons, human reasons, right? Like, I just look at the light in your eyes, Chaya, and I don't think if it was in my power, I could refuse you anything that you wanted when you look at me with those eyes. Like, I see that you're on fire from the inside, and it's impossible to resist. But that's what we're looking for, right? When you see that lit up human being, that person is going to kill it for you.
And remember that light isn't always clear. A lot of times we walk into the repair shop or the dealership and we are defeated. We are exhausted and defeated. That doesn't mean that underneath isn't somebody who's going to absolutely knock it out of the park if you put a little bit of thought, a little bit of care, and a little bit of effort into building that person up. Because it's hard. I spent 3 months looking for sponsors, and I still don't have enough to fund the entire tour. But, I'm grateful to everybody who said yes. But I also know that if I was not a woman, especially if I was not such an outspoken, openly queer person who shares what I think and puts my community first, that I would have a lot more opportunities and a lot more funding and a lot more here where I am today. That's not going to change what I do. It's not. And I always tell brands when they reach out, one of my rules is your contract cannot tell me what to wear. You cannot approve my clothes. If you see my platform and my persona on the internet and you like it, then we're going to be a great fit. And if you think you're going to fit me into some box in order to pay me money to do the work that I'm doing, that's just not going to work.
Yes, that's right. And look what happens when you let someone go outside the box. You get sequins. What is wrong with that?
Listen, I'm wearing Christopher John Rogers on the cover of this book, okay? That is like a really freaking cool designer. And I'm very proud to have, when I when I submitted the book proposal for this book and I talked to the editors and they picked up, it's being published. It's published by Hachette, one of the biggest publishers in the whole world. They had a little bit of a different idea of what the book would look like than I did. There was a different name. There was a different cover. They weren't very excited necessarily putting me on the front of the cover. But when they read the book, when they got that manuscript, that first draft, everything changed, because it's like I'm talking to you. It's in first person. I tell stories from my followers and my friends and my communities that submitted them using a Google form and told me about their experiences. I use data and statistics and research, and I make it approachable for everybody. And I know it's it's sort of a tall order. It's a high bar to reach. But I really believe that if I, a little tiny small business owner in Milwaukee who's doing this out of a spare room in my house, can put so much intention and effort into creating an inclusive space, imagine what massive corporations with millions and millions of dollars can do if they just directed their efforts into something that was intentional and carefully curated and done with passion and with community at the focus. Imagine what kind of automotive world we can live in.
I do. I imagine that world every day. And thanks to people like you, we're a little bit closer.
Just a little bit. And you, Kathleen, because you know what? When you said yes, you were the first person that said yes to the book tour. I was very close to giving up. I was like, listen, I can't get any money. The people who said they're almost positive it's a yes fell apart after, they went up the food chain. And I was like, listen, I need a yes. I need a yes now, because I need to start the process of building the tour. This wasn't something that came from the publisher. Like, I found the shops, I built the tour myself and my team. I did all the coordinating and the logistics and all of the things. And, I'm not the only one that's taking a risk. The communities that are welcoming me in, the shops that are welcoming me in, they're taking a risk too about what the possibilities are of what's going to happen based on the fact that they are welcoming a queer woman into their space to talk about cars. So I'm grateful to everything that you've done. And the sponsorship, that's just one little thing. Like, you shine a light on so many things. And you know what? You've reached a place in your career where you live truly and authentically yourself, at least to the degree that I can tell. And you lift people up with you. And that's hard to find.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I have a lot of roles in life, but one of my favorite ones is green light. Anytime I can say yes, like to something I really want to do, is a good day. So I appreciate you for doing what you do so that I can, be in that support role, because I get so much out of it too. So with that, I think we probably need a part 2 to this whole thing so we can hear how the whole thing went when it's all over. But I just appreciate you being here so much, Chaya, and for everything that you had to say. I think this is one of the juiciest episodes ever.
Thank you. Well, I'd be honored to come back as always. And, I hate to always, I have to pitch myself, but that's the position that I'm in. So if you're watching this and you want to work with somebody who works with the average person, if you want to get your products and your services and your brand out in front of the average car owner, the standard consumer, women who make 85% of car buying decisions in the United States, just reach out to me. And that doesn't mean I'm going to work with you. I will see it as a fit, because it has to be an authentic fit to who I am too. And that's how I bring value to you, that I don't say yes to everybody. I say yes to who is going to be the best fit for the community that I've spent years and years building.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm glad we both said yes to each other, Chaya. It feels good.
Always to you, Kathleen. You just reach out. You know where to find me.
I do.